veto, essentially, that's unrelated to that question. Sorry about that. Any other questions? Okay, so let's talk very briefly about a couple of other questionable counterplans that probably aren't going to be too much of a problem on this year's topic, but probably will the next we have a domestic topic. These are mechanism counterplans. This is a specific type of plan-inclusive counterplan which merely changes the mechanism by which the plan is passed. A couple of examples are veto-cheato, where Congress passes the plan, the president vetoes, and then Congress overrides the veto. The objective is to get essentially a politics to set as a net benefit. 9-0 counterplans, where instead of ruling 5-4 on a question, the Supreme Court rules 9-0. The objective being to get out of court politics or court legitimacy, or in the case of a really terrible round I heard at NPDA this year, because 9-0 decisions are harder to overturn. Yeah, I don't get it either. And then alternate ground counterplans, where the Supreme Court decides a question the same way, but on a different constitutional basis. So, I mean, these counterplans are all dealing with the mechanism by which the plan is passed instead of the action of the plan, I guess. Now, the negative justification is that the affirmative is responsible for defending all of their plan, up to including the means of their implementation. And the mechanism of implementation is no different than the substantive plan. And the affirmative response is generally that no, this is something that's subsumed by fiat. This is not a question of we sort of get the optimal means of implementation. That whatever normal means is, there's only one version of normal means, and that's what we all use. And that we shouldn't be allowed to engage in this kind of debate about optimal, what kind of implementation is best. That normal means is good enough for everybody. I don't want to talk too long about those because it's not a real big part of this year's topic. I want to talk about some theory strategy right quick. I know we're running a little on time, and I want to leave some time for questions. So, some general tips on theory strategy. Especially on the negative, start theory debates early. You only get one chance to respond, and then the two ARs make golden responses. So I think if you are running a consult counterplan, or a dispositional conditional counterplan, or a topical counterplan, or a plan-inclusive counterplan, you want to start that theory debate early. You want to have justifications for that in the 1NC. Here's why. Otherwise, the 1AR makes the theoretical objections, you respond, the 2AR responds, and the debate is over. The 2AR's responses in most judges' minds then are golden, and you are going to have problems with your theoretical justifications. You're going to have to depend on the judge to think your counterplan is legit and make those sort of J and R responses to the 2AR answers. So start theory debates early. Another important note for negative running counterplans is to go offensive in theory debates. Don't defend. Don't defend, justify. Don't say just that your practice is bad. You want to say that your practice is good for debate, that it has pedagogical usefulness. Otherwise, I mean, it's the same as just indicting the harms of a case. It's, generally speaking, not sufficient for a victory in and of itself. You need to have some kind of justification for what you're doing. If you just say, well, it's not that bad, and the affirmative gets up and says, well, it's still bad. So being able to provide some offensive justification for your theory is probably a good idea. And again, that's something you should probably deploy in the 1NC. One last note about theory strategy, and that's on the importance of interpretations. You don't ever want to just come out and say, here's my list of reasons why plan-inclusive counterplans are bad. Treat it like a topicality violation. Here's my interpretation of what counterplans are that excludes plan-inclusive counterplans. Here's why they violate that. Here's my list of reasons why that is bad, and here's why it's a voter. That is much more useful to you to provide a concrete interpretation because it exposes you to the limitations of a bright line. It exposes you to, it allows you to say, this is a pick, this is not, and it lends a lot of theoretical legitimacy to your argument. It also is just a much easier way to organize your thoughts on theory. So that's what I have to say about counterplan theory and the strategy involved in deploying the theory. And I know there's another lecture tonight about answering counterplans. It's going to answer a lot more of your questions. Are there any questions right now?
Did you want to mention study counterplans and their status in the charter?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can talk about it real quick. I mean, study counterplans say either that we're going to delay, or we're going to do the counterplan as a test, or do the plan as a test. We're just going to see if it works, see how well it works, see what we can change about it, and after 30 days we'll reconvene and talk about it again. These are specifically excluded by NFA-LD rules, and also expose you to a whole host of theoretical objections, such as that's optimal means fiat, and also it essentially allows you to spike out of any distance you might link, and it allows you to engage in a lot of other shady practices. The same is true of delay counterplans, I think. No, it's not. Never mind. Yeah, study counterplans have generally fallen out of practice because they lead to a lot of very boring debates about whether or not looking at things is good. And I mean, no one wants to have debates like that where we talk, where the affirmative ground is thinking about the effects of a policy after we pass it as bad. So I think that's, I mean, those have really fallen out of style. And again, they're specifically excluded by NFA-LD rules, and I've not seen one. We could talk briefly about delay counterplans. The idea that we just wait 6 months or a year to do the affirmative plan, generally done with a politics net benefit. The affirmative argument is that like the time frame is not identified in the resolution. So one, it's topical, and two, it's okay, I remember two. But one, I mean, it's a topical counterplan. It is also, again, theoretically legitimate because it usurps literally all of affirmative ground. Like, there's nothing in the literature about the immediacy of any given policy, or those kind of arguments are very rare. So delay counterplans are fairly rare. It's another form of mechanism counterplan, essentially. It allows people to usurp the mandates and gives artificial uniqueness to disadvantages. And yeah, so.
Aren't delay counterplays essentially competitive as well? I mean, essentially, if we said we're going to wait 6 months to do it, you determine it's too high. We'll do the plan and wait 6 months to do it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a question as to whether or not you see a plan is implied in plan text. Like, if you say we should do this without saying we should do this now, is it implied you're stuck doing this now? Yeah, I think the permutation is fairly persuasive in that instance.
Is it more than likely that your advantage scenarios will probably depend on the immediate passage of plan?
I mean, I suppose they could be, or at the very least, like harms are generally ongoing, and so passing plan sooner rather than later gives us a better access to an advantage. Though that becomes somewhat difficult to leverage against like large politics disadvantages, because you've got what, like 30, 60 days of an ongoing impact that's been going on since you found your research, versus this one monumental disad. Though there are a lot of time-sensitive advantage scenarios, like if you've got an internal politics scenario, or something like that where there's sort of brink to your harms, then you say every delay brings us closer to not capturing this advantage. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you for your time, and Brooks is up.